Hello, all you positive heads out there. It's so good to be back with all you beautiful reflections of the one source consciousness that creates and animates all things. If you're new to this podcast, of course, we're super happy to have you here. And if you've been listening and enjoying for a while, I would be super grateful if you would please take a moment to give us a review on Apple Podcasts. It's one of the best and simplest ways to pay it forward and help others find the show so that they too can tap into the powerful perspectives and positive vibrations we are collectively emanating. The other unique and magical way to share this show is by sending any friends you think would benefit from listening to this podcast our Game with the Universe link at positivehead.com/game. Also listed in the show notes, which will serve them up a quote-unquote random episode when they click it. Just instruct them before clicking the link to close their eyes for a moment and sincerely ask the universe to cue up the episode that contains the insight and perspectives that they most need to hear at this point in their life journey, and then click to listen to whatever episode is synchronistically served up to them. I have heard time and time again from people about the incredible results they received playing the game. So just tell your friends magical results are guaranteed or their karma back.
All right, all you positive heads, welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us today. Samantha and I are here, and we have some fun magic to discuss and talk about today, all surrounding this beautiful holiday of Christmas. How you doing today, Samantha?
I am feeling so well, thank you. Really excited to dive into this with you.
Totally. So I began my fascination with a mushroom called Amanita muscaria a couple years ago. We were up on the Mendocino coast for Thanksgiving, and we were driving up the road, and I see this beautiful red thing. And I was like, stop the car, stop the car. I get out, and there's this beautiful red-capped mushroom, white little spots. And after that, I just became fascinated. So we're going to talk about the connection with that mushroom, its magic, and Santa Claus.
This sounds like a really terrible joke in the beginning. Like, what do Santa Claus and a magical mushroom have in common?
Right.
Well, way more than you would have imagined.
Way more. And this story is ancient. It goes back to ancient Siberia, which I don't know if we can put a date to that, because I know that ancient Siberia could be anywhere from like 30,000 to 40,000 years old. And I'm not sure exactly where. Did you find any dates when you did your research?
No, not a particular date.
Yeah.
Just a long, long, long time ago.
Long, ancient. We'll just call it ancient Siberia. Yeah. So I think this was before Christ.
Makes sense.
Right? Yeah. So a little bit of the story. The Amanita muscaria mushroom, also known as the fly agaric, that's its common name. It grows under pine trees. And in Siberia, in the ancient times, they are a shamanistic culture. It's actually where the word shaman came from. And what they would do is, as far as I read, the shamans observed the reindeer. The reindeer had a fascination for this mushroom. So they would observe them eating it, and then even eating their own urine in the snow. And they would watch the effects it had on the reindeer. So they thought, hey, let's try this and see what happens. And in, of course, traditional shamanic ways, they journeyed, and they considered this mushroom very sacred. And they journeyed and came back with gifts for their people.
Yeah, being a little bit more in depth on the word journey, these vision journeys, these quests would be to consume these sacred mushrooms or plants or trees or elixirs and go into various states of consciousness to receive the downloads and the wisdom and the medicine that the ethereal plane of existence would have for them. And it's so wild because we live in these modern times where we don't really sit out in the forest watching reindeer. However, this is what they did. They knew that they would learn from Mother Nature, from watching the trees and the birds and the animals. And so really witnessing what these reindeer were doing, they thought, yeah, hey, let's try some of this.
So the story goes too that as they would go out and forage for the mushrooms, they would pick them. And because the mushroom is toxic, it's psychedelic, but it's also very toxic. They learned how to work with it, and they learned that it had to be dried. It was one of the ways of working with it. So they would hang the mushroom off a tree. So as they were foraging, they would just put the mushrooms all over these pine trees. And if you could imagine them doing this all day, all these decorated trees all over the forest. And then they would come back later, after a little while, to pick them up and carry them in a big sack.
So we're starting to already see some of the similarities. Remember, we were talking about Santa Claus and Christmas. Now, imagine these big, beautiful pine trees. And now these shamans are hanging these beautiful red ornamental looking mushrooms all over these pine trees. And then when they collect them, they carry them over their shoulders in these big sacks to bring home to their families. Where does that sound familiar?
And so there's another story about when they would go on their journey to the three worlds, the lower, the middle, and the upper spirit world, that their spirit would leave through the chimney, and then it would return through the chimney bearing those gifts. So that's where the story of Santa Claus coming down the chimney comes from.
Yeah, there was also another theory with that, was that there was just so much snow and that the doors could be barricaded. But what they would do is they had this latch type of opening at the top of their buildings where they could leave from the ceiling or from the chimney, essentially. And so that was also this where, Santa Claus would come in through the chimney.
So neat. And, totally off topic, but yesterday, I'm in Colorado right now. Yesterday, on the way here, we stopped at the Aztec National Monument, which is an ancient pueblo. It's like 900 years old, and a lot of it is still intact. But that's how they entered through the roof into their homes. So I think that was just an ancient entrance, a way to enter the house.
Wow, especially, when you're completely covered in snow in Siberia.
Exactly. Yeah.
Huh.
Mm-hmm. So what else did you find out about this fun mushroom?
What else did I find out about the fun mushroom? Yeah, just that it was around that time that they would do these practices, especially around the solstice. So it was a tradition that the solstice is when they would pick the mushroom, or not pick the mushroom, but they would utilize the mushrooms. It's also the day when the veil is very thin, when the connection to source is very, very powerful and potent. And they would sit together in community, and they would consume this magical mushroom and go into their journeys and connect with spirit and source, and then share these gifts with their communities. And this was a part of their tradition because it would bring them back to themselves. And Christmas, Christ consciousness, when you are taking ceremonial mushrooms in this kind of fashion, you are really connected to source consciousness, to the Christ. And so this is something that was just deeply ingrained in their traditions. And it said that over the years, this kind of transformed. And as word spread of these traditions, especially when it mixed with more of the Catholic religions and the Christian faith, well, it was changed from these magical mushrooms to gifts. And it was Santa Claus who would, bring the toys. And so the story changed and transitioned to fit the religion and the culture, but it originated essentially from this ancient Siberian tradition.
Absolutely. I love that you brought up the solstice, because what's interesting is that when we have the solstice, the sun is at its furthest point, right? And so it stays almost hidden for those 3 days until the morning of the 25th, when the sun comes up, and it's like the birth of the sun, bringing new life. Yes. Right?
Exactly. And the parallels between the birth of the sun on the 25th, these Aztec traditions as well. Well, it's when you take the rising of Christ, or Christ's birthday, and you mirror it with these old ancient philosophies and ways of seeing that the sun would rise again. There's so many parallels. And a lot of people believe that the stories of Jesus being born or the Christ, or they're actually metaphorical for the sun and the Aztec philosophies and folklore of just the natural rhythms of the sun.
Absolutely. Yeah. And also, there's a little bit more history behind Santa Claus. The shamanic history is the original, I think. But as time went on, there was St. Nicholas. And he was a bishop in Turkey, and he was known for his generosity.
Mm-hmm.
And what I found is that he was connected to Jesus because he was actually part of the Council of Nicaea. Well, not directly, but he was in the Council of Nicaea. He was a huge proponent of Jesus and his teachings. So that's how St. Nicholas came to be associated with Jesus and Christmas as well.
It's so fun when you go back into it and look at where these stories originated. And it's fun, and it's also very eye-opening, because most of us are taught the latest iteration of the story, and we connect it to something completely different. But when you go back and see where the story has evolved from and originated from, it actually really shifts your paradigm on things like Christmas or Jesus or Christianity and some of the stories that we have. We're seeing that a lot of these religions are metaphorical, where we've been taught that they're literal, and shifting from like a literal God in the sky, man with a white beard, to a metaphorical, like, all and everything in God is very different. And this is really where we're playing in spirituality, when we're understanding the metaphor of it and the connection and the underlying essence of it, rather than what has been taught in the literal sense for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years now. And it's really wild when you start to peel back the layers and see the essence and how it's quite different than what we may have believed or been taught.
Completely. And what's very interesting too, all of these ancient texts, the Bible, ancient Hermetic texts, they're all written in symbolism. You have to peel apart the layers and break it down to understand what it's actually saying. And so throughout time, there have been humans who say, this is exactly what this means. And I don't think that we can do that. I think it's really important for us all to understand that everyone who reads a certain passage may have a different perspective. 30 different people could read it 30 different ways.
Absolutely. And to know that the Bible was also written by many, many people over many, many years in different time frames. And yeah, it's just wild when you start to learn. In university, I took philosophy, and I also took a class called the sociology of religion, and it was just so fascinating. And the original text, the original Bible, back in ancient Rome, where Catholicism was really birthed, most of the people were not able to read. These sacred texts were created for the wealthy, for the 1%, and they could only really understand the true meaning, the metaphor to them, where they were, even in Hermetica, they were speaking in metaphors, so that it was very elite. Only certain people could really understand, and the rest of the people would believe the metaphor, and not see that they were metaphors, but take it literally. And they said that it was to keep the separation between the elite and just the regular people, so that the power, essentially, and this wisdom would be only held in the hands of few. And this is something that has gone now for generations and generations and generations, and the separation between the elite and the regular people. Well, this has shifted and grown in separation massively, not just in wealth, in terms of financial wealth, but also in the wealth of information and true wisdom.
Yeah, it absolutely has. But I also see a big coming back. We're bringing back our acknowledgement of our power. One of the things I read at this Aztec monument was, we remember to remember. We have all of this within us. We know that within us is our greatest power, in our hearts, in our minds. And yeah, it's all there in those ancient texts. And what's interesting about passing down things through word of mouth is that, do you ever play Whisper Down the Lane? Right?
Or broken telephone.
Right.
Yes.
You never get the same message at the end. No. Ever. No. So that's just another thing to consider, is that there's always a lot more to the story, and the truth is definitely stranger than fiction.
Before we continue on with today's episode, for those of you interested in getting more fantastic fungi in your life, I want to take a quick moment to tell you about a friend of mine's brand new company, The Great Mother. Recently, I have been drinking The Great Mother's superfood mushroom coffee alternative called Ritual, as well as regularly taking their awesome Ally microdoses, and I am truly loving both. As you probably know, these days, many of the world's highest achievers and performers swear by microdosing. The problem is it can still be difficult to get a hold of magic mushrooms. That's why when my friend reached out, who lives in an area and country where legalization is not a problem like it was in the past, and said he'd be willing to offer microdoses to my listeners, I wanted to pass the word along. Ally microdoses are 100% organic. And in addition to a small amount of the magic active ingredient, they also contain functional mushrooms like lion's mane, cordyceps, chaga, and other brain boosters like bacopa. Ally is essentially a full spectrum nootropic. And of course, the coffee alternative Ritual doesn't contain magic mushrooms, but it has an array of the best organic functional mushrooms in the world. And, with functional mushrooms, it's really important to get them from the highest integrity sources. And whereas some other highly popular mushroom coffee alternatives on the market only contain a few varieties of functional mushrooms in their actual ingredients, Ritual has 7. Not only does it contain more types, it also contains 3 to 4 times the amount that the big brands have in each serving. And it tastes amazing. I actually like to have it on its own, as well as mixing it into my coffee sometimes as well. However, since this is definitely a unique offering, there are a few steps. First, just reach out and request to follow the private page, thegreat.mother on Instagram. Once you've been accepted to follow, just message what you're interested in getting and someone will get back to you.
It really is. That's the thing. And we just start to peel back those layers and to see. For the longest time, when I was maybe 18, which was over 12 years ago, 13 years ago, I remember watching the documentary called Zeitgeist, which just blew me open to see all of the corruption and all the falsities and all of the illusions. And it was things that I had already been feeling into and questioning. And I was, questioning religion and questioning culture and all of the different things. And this video just blew my mind. And since then, I've just dove into every rabbit hole and really asking questions and doing the research. And a lot of the things I talk about definitely trigger people, in philosophy, or talking about ethics, or talking about politics, or about what we should or shouldn't be eating, or God. And these are definitely triggering concepts for a lot of people because we get so dogmatic and stuck into our identities. But the reason why that I'm so open about speaking this is because I've really dove in and done the digging to see the different sides of the stories. And I'm not saying that my perspective is ever right, it's just the one that I hold. And I'm open to sharing it because I feel like we need to have more of these open, honest, authentic, and transparent conversations, just to broaden our perspectives and open our eyes to what might be possible that we didn't even know.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, completely. It's interesting. I was raised Catholic. I went to private Catholic school, grade school, high school, college. So talk about like trying to indoctrinate someone did not work at all, because there was so many things that were taught along the way that just didn't make sense to me. Like I should fear God. No, I should not. So that was one of my biggest red flags out there. And that also, you've seen this whole new age deception, and there's almost like a exodus of people who are removing themselves from the spiritual world, like getting rid of all their crystals and incense and anything associated with spirituality. And what I see with that is just still so much fear, because there's light and dark to everything, and you can see it however you want to see it, right?
I actually haven't heard of that people.
Oh, you haven't?
No.
Oh, geez.
So there's a whole movement of people exiting spirituality.
Check out some of Doreen Virtue's new videos.
Interesting.
And I think when I look at her YouTube page, she's got way more followers now than she used to.
Interesting. It's so funny. I believe that the war on the planet is really a war of consciousness. Just like how we could go through decades of thinking foods like butter are really, really awful and all fat is bad, and then all of a sudden now fat is the everything and it's sugar's bad, and then it's margarine's bad, and then it's this is bad, and we realize like it is what we all believe it is. And our consciousness really, the collective consciousness really dictates what is capital T truth, because it's just a big box of perception and belief, and consciousness belief. And so it's so funny, that tipping point, the more that you get a whole bunch of people to believe in one thing, it actually becomes real. And so it's so funny just to witness these movements. And so for anyone out there who's noticing this big trend and wants to jump on, just dig back in history a little bit and look at how the trends have shifted and molded, and just recognize that all of these trends, they're all transient, they're all moving, and just be a bit more aware, do a bit more research, ask more questions rather than just blindly jumping into anything.
And also remember that there is a dark and a light side to everything, and nothing is 100% positive and light all the time. And that's one of the complaints about the whole new age, is that everything is positive and light. And I think that that's a huge misconception, because I know for sure that's not what I believe. I understand very well that there is a very good balance, and we need that balance. We need it for contrast. We need it to learn. And also everything, like you were just saying, everything is consciousness. Everything is energy. It is what we make it. So we get to decide which wolf we're feeding, which side of the coin we want to look at, which perspective we want to see. Is it fear or is it love?
That's it. I really believe there are only two choices. There are only two energies, fear or love. And so when we're choosing anything, asking ourselves like, well, am I making this decision out of fear, or am I making it out of love? And to tie it back into our origination of mushroom conversation, I feel like using a tool such as magical mushrooms in a very intentional and ceremonious way can really help. It can really help to bring you back into alignment with your truth, to get you to go inwards and sort through some of the illusions and go in and re-architect your reality and come into deeper knowingness and alignment with yourself. So the fact that, people have been using magical mushrooms for thousands of years now, it is a really beautiful tool that when used appropriately can be of great service.
Absolutely. And when you use mushrooms medicinally, what you start to understand is your connection with the whole. And what's also really neat is when you look at the biology and the science behind mushrooms, they're all connected. There is this mycorrhizal network, right? And if you've watched the new Star Trek series, they travel through this spore network that is created by these mushrooms. And there is this synergistic relationship between the mushrooms and the trees. And everything is connected. Now that I'm thinking about this, back to the Christmas trees, where that came from is the shamans would bring the tree into their yurt ceremonially. And the North Star was always aligned with the upper world. And so that's where the star on the Christmas tree idea comes from. It's the upper world and the tree symbolizes the world tree, all three worlds together.
I love that. And this just identifies there's meaning in everything. There's meaning in everything. We don't want to get too lost in seeking the meaning in everything and then lose attachment or connection to the physical world. But just recognizing like there really is meaning in everything. And the more that you dive in and the more that you play with this and go into it, you get to see that life is so sacred. Life is so sacred and beautiful. And you really nailed it. I want to just reflect back something that you said, is that it's all energy and we get to choose. We really get to choose how we utilize our energy, which energy we choose to engage with, how we want to be, how we want to feel. And that's a really important lesson as we're in the holiday season right now, because it can definitely be triggering, can definitely be challenging, and it can also be the best opportunity for healing and growth and coming together and unifying and choosing love.
Seeing your family members that trigger you when they say certain things, instead of immediately letting it trigger you, see the best in them. See them having the best intentions possible. it's like we're so used to seeing them in a different light that it's hard for us to look at them the other way. But the minute you look at them and you're like, you're just trying to be helpful. You care about me. You love me. I understand that. The dynamic completely changes. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I know that from personal experience. My dad and I think he left the room. My dad and I had a really tough relationship. And when my mother passed 15 years ago, we're actually coming up on the anniversary of her transition. And it was one of those things where I was like, why couldn't you take him instead? Because I really liked her better, And I think a lot of people who lose a parent go through that. And what's interesting is that I didn't have to heal a relationship with my mother. I had to heal a relationship with my dad. And her passing helped that. And this time of year, it's like we just get to rekindle, refresh, remember. Yeah.
Oof, that's so powerful.
Yeah.
And we really get to heal the relationship. We get to mend it. We get to infuse more love into our families. And if we're waiting for our families to take the first step, we're caught in the illusion. We get to do that.
Because we're the ones that are aware. We can't expect someone who's completely unaware to see it. So if we see it, we have to be the bigger person, essentially. We have to, because we understand, we have to take that personal responsibility on ourselves.
Yeah, we get to.
It's a greater, we do.
Yeah, we don't have to.
No.
And we'll just perpetuate this.
Right.
So we really, and when we reframe like that, well, I get to do this. I get to be the hero of my family. Wow, there's so much power in the energy of those words.
And maybe that's why I came. Maybe I came to be the beacon of light in this family.
Ooh, I feel you did.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I did. And so did all of you. Every single one of you listening is that person in your family. You wouldn't have found this podcast if you weren't.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So remember, you are the beacon of light this Christmas. Don't let anybody dim your light.
Or any other holiday that it might be for you. I know we're really Christmasing on it. That's our holiday. And for all of the other holidays, or if you don't celebrate holidays, just for this season, remember, you are that lighthouse.
Because it is the season of going within. So go within and see your light. Remember it. Remember to remember.
So good.
Yeah. Well, Samantha, I think we are out of imaginary time for today. This has been an amazing chat. I really enjoy our chats.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much. I'm glad we got to jam out before the holiday.
Yeah. Happy holidays to everyone. Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah. Happy Kwanzaa. It's all happening now-ish. So we are going to leave you with a song today, and it's kind of a fun little song. And I am taking a little chance. I think it's not going to be too inappropriate. It's from South Park. I think you guys will like it. Thought it'd be fun to have a little laugh today. And this is the Santa and Jesus duet. Until next time, everyone. Love you all.
Love you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Mechanics. Now, please put your hands together and welcome St. Nicholas and Jesus Christ.
Hello, everybody.
How y'all doing tonight?
You know, Jesus, there have been so many wonderful songs written about us over the years.
That's right, Santa, and we love each and every one of them. Like this one. Joy to the world, for I have come. Let earth receive me. Let every heart prepare me room.
And heaven and nature sing. And heaven and nature sing.
And heaven and nature sing.
You know, Jesus, that is a nice song, but I like this one. Up on the housetop, reindeer paws, out jumps good old me. Down through the chimney with lots of toys, all for the little ones' Christmas joys. Ho, 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 who wouldn't go? Ho, 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 who wouldn't go? Up on the housetop, click, 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 down through the chimney with good old me.
You get away.
Go away?
Get away.
Where away?
Away in the manger, no crib for my bed. That's where cute little old me laid down my sweet head. The stars in the sky looked down where I lay. Cute little 8-pound me asleep in the hay. Oh, come all ye faithful, joyful and triumphant. Oh, come ye to Bethlehem to see me.
Here's one.
Hark the herald angels sing, glory
It's my
to
turn.
me. Silent night, holy night, all is
Santa
calm,
Claus.
all is bright, round yon virgin
Saint
mother and me.
Can't think of
Holy
one.
me, tender and mild, sleep in heavenly peace, sleep in heavenly peace.
Okay, Jesus, here's one you might remember. Her name is Rio, and she dances on the sand. Just like that river twisting through the dusty land.
Santa, that's not a Christmas song, bud.
I know, but there's like 300 Jesus Christmas songs and only 4 f***ing Santa ones. It's not fair. Just do it yourself. I'm leaving.
Oh, come on, Santa, you can't leave.
Oh, cute Jesus.
But Santa, the weather outside is frightful,
Oh,
but the fire is so delightful.
well, since I've no place to go,
Let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. It doesn't show signs of stopping.
but I brought some corn for poopity-popping.
The lights are turned way down low, so let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. The fire is slowly dying,
And my dear, we're still good, bye-bye.
but as long as you love me so, let it snow, let